Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. A dream to transform a country from an agrarian society into a global superpower in just a few years. This was Mao Zedong's vision for China in the late 1950s. It all started with a simple, electrifying slogan: turn your backyard into a steel factory. China was determined to leapfrog industrial giants like Britain and the United States, not in decades, but in a matter of years. The air was thick with optimism. People across the country, from farmers in remote villages to workers in bustling cities, were filled with a revolutionary fervor. They believed they were on the cusp of a golden age, building a new, powerful China. But beneath this wave of hope, a storm was gathering, and no one could foresee the devastating tragedy that was about to unfold. This is the story of the Great Leap Forward, a tale of ambition, illusion, and a catastrophic human cost that reshaped China forever. In 1958, Mao Zedong officially launched the Great Leap Forward. It was one of the most ambitious social and economic campaigns in human history. The central goal was crystal clear: rapidly transform China from a farming-based economy into a modern, industrial, and socialist powerhouse. The key to this transformation: steel. Steel was seen as the backbone of industrial might, the very symbol of progress. To achieve this, Mao's government completely restructured Chinese society. Private farming, a practice that had existed for thousands of years, was abolished overnight. In its place, massive people's communes were established. These were colossal collective units, sometimes encompassing tens of thousands of people. Everything was shared: the land you worked, the tools you used, the food you ate, even the roof over your head. Families ate in communal dining halls and children were raised in communal nurseries. The idea was to free up an enormous labor force, directing millions of people away from the fields and towards grand industrial projects, primarily steel production. It was a radical social experiment, a bet that collective will could conquer any obstacle on the path to a utopian future. With the plan in motion, the entire country was mobilized. The most iconic feature of the Great Leap Forward was the backyard furnace. All across China, in schoolyards, on street corners, and literally in people's backyards, small, crudely built furnaces popped up. The mission was to produce steel, and the quotas set by the government were fantastically high. Ordinary people, farmers, teachers, doctors who had never seen a blast furnace in their lives, were now tasked with becoming steelworkers. Lacking iron ore, they were encouraged to melt down any metal they could find. Household pots and pans, farming tools, door knockers, even metal window frames were fed into the fires. The goal wasn't just to produce steel. It was to demonstrate revolutionary passion. Meanwhile, local officials, eager to please their superiors and terrified of being labeled as right-wing conservatives, began to wildly exaggerate their production numbers. They reported record-breaking harvests and impossible steel outputs. When Mao Zedong toured the countryside, he was shown specially prepared fields, where grain stalks were transplanted to look incredibly dense, giving the illusion of a miraculous harvest. These falsified reports painted a picture of unbelievable success. Believing the numbers, Mao and the central government were convinced that their grand experiment was not only working but exceeding all expectations. The nation, it seemed, was truly leaping forward. But behind the propaganda posters and the glowing reports, a grim reality was taking hold. The mass mobilization of labor for steel production had a catastrophic, unintended consequence. Agriculture collapsed. Millions of able-bodied farmers had left the fields to tend to the backyard furnaces. Those who remained were often exhausted from working on industrial projects at night. As a result, grain production plummeted. Compounding the disaster, the government, believing the fabricated reports of bumper crops, continued to procure grain from the countryside at incredibly high rates. These procurement quotas were based on fictional harvests, meaning officials often seized every last seed of grain from the villages to meet their targets. Even worse, China continued to export grain to other socialist countries like the Soviet Union and Albania, eager to project an image of success and abundance to the outside world. All the while, a terrifying famine was beginning to creep across rural China. A culture of fear silenced anyone who dared to question the official narrative. Local cadres who knew the truth were afraid of being purged for challenging the party line. The truth was buried under a mountain of lies, and the Chinese people were left to face the devastating consequences alone. From 1959 to 1962, China was plunged into what is now known as the Great Famine, one of the deadliest in human history. The dream of a socialist paradise had turned into a living nightmare. While official records are difficult to access, Historians estimate that somewhere between 15 and 55 million people died from starvation and related diseases. The most conservative and widely cited figure is around 30 million. Entire villages were wiped off the map. Desperate and starving, people resorted to eating whatever they could find: tree bark, leaves, leather, and even a type of clay called guanyon soil, which provided a false sense of fullness but ultimately led to death. Stories of unimaginable horror emerged from the countryside. The communal dining halls, once symbols of collective prosperity, became empty halls of despair as food supplies ran out completely. The social fabric of the nation tore apart under the immense strain of hunger. The campaign that had begun with so much hope, a grand vision to catapult China into the future, had culminated in an unprecedented human tragedy. The Great Leap Forward had become a great leap into the abyss. By 1962, the scale of the disaster could no longer be ignored. Even by the highest echelons of the Communist Party, the catastrophic failure of the Great Leap Forward forced a major shift in policy. Mao Zedong, while still the chairman, stepped back from the day-to-day management of the economy. More pragmatic leaders, like Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping, came to the forefront. They quietly dismantled the people's communes, allowing farmers to cultivate private plots of land once again. They implemented more realistic economic reforms focused on restoring agricultural production and stabilizing the nation. The immediate crisis began to subside, but the scars of the famine ran deep. The Great Leap Forward served as a brutal, unforgettable lesson for China. It demonstrated the catastrophic danger of putting ideology and political fervor above scientific reality and human well-being. It showed that ambition, without sound planning and a willingness to face the truth, can lead not to progress, but to destruction on a massive scale. China learned, in the most painful way imaginable, that building a nation requires not just slogans and revolutionary passion, but also pragmatism, honesty, and a profound respect for the lives of its people. Thank you so much for watching. The history of the Great Leap Forward is complex and deeply sobering, and it's a critical part of understanding modern China. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into pivotal moments in history.